أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء. تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم. كما قال عز شأنه: كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت. وقال: كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعذب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات. سبحان الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يراه ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يراه. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه. يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء. تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل. ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين. من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى. أوصيكم والنفسي بتقوى الله ونظم أمركم. I advise you all and myself to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to organize our affairs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We were discussing the Sermon of Muttaqeen, which is attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, where Imam says: عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ فَصَغُرَ مَا دُونَهُ فِي أَعْيُنِهِمْ فهم والجنة كمن قد رآه فهم فيها منعمون وهم والنار كمن قد رآه فهم فيها معذبون. Imam describes the qualities of God-fearing people, and we are discussing this sermon so that we can understand what are the qualities and what are the attributes of those who are afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Imam says that these people, عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, these people have placed the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their hearts, and they look towards everything else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be small. Everything appears to be small in their eyes other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَهُمْ وَالْجَنَّةُ كَمَنْ قَدْ رَآهُ, and these people are looking at the paradise as if they are seeing the paradise. And فَهُمْ فِيهَا مُنَعَّمُونَ, and they are as if benefiting from the favors of the paradise. وَهُمْ وَالنَّارُ كَمَنْ قَدْ رَآهُ, and these people are so God-fearing that they are as if looking at the hellfire. فَهُمْ فِيهَا مُعَذَّبُونَ, and they are as if they are tasting the punishment of the hell. Now, continuing where we left last week, where we were trying to understand how to understand the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how to manifest this term, this phrase, Allahu Akbar, in our lives. This was the whole topic of the previous week, and today again we want to continue. Now, to look at this manifestation, and we have to understand that there is no effect in existence except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that takes place, the cause is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is wajibul wujud. Everything, each and everything that is taking place in this world is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this gives us a sense of greatness of Allah. And we have to understand that all that matters in this world, in this universe, is subject to His will and His wish. Everything in this world, from the smallest to the tiniest and to the biggest, everything is subject to His will and wish. It is according to His will and wish. Now, we know that if He wants to give us something, no one can stop. And if he wants to inflict, a harm, no one can stop him. This is what Surah Al-Yunus, verse number 107 says. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends to afflict you with some distress, no one can stop him. No one can remove that except him. فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ. If he wants to afflict something, some harm or some distress, no one can stop him. وَإِن يُرِدْكَ بِخَيْرٍ فَلَا رَادَّ لِفَضْلِهِ. And if he wishes to give you some favor, if he wishes to grant you his favors, no one can stop him from that. No one can stop him from delivering his favors to you. We have to understand that it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the most effective in this world. He is the cause of everything. He is wajibul wujud. Now, we know this. This is all we discussed last week. Now, to understand the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that, this phrase, Allahu Akbar, can, have some meaning in our lives. Therefore, to understand His glory, to understand His greatness, there are different ways which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us in His great book, and in many narrations it is mentioned. Now, for instance, in chapter Ghashiyah, there are few verses from 17 up till 20. What do we say? We say, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Don't you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a camel? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to look at the camel and to ponder and to think that what lies in the creation of this camel. A camel is an animal in a desert, and people who are, who inhabit those places and live in those places, usually they use camels. Now, this example is not only for the people living in the deserts. This is also an example for people living in places where there are no deserts and they don't use camels. But still, if you think on the creation of the camel, you will understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. Don't you look at the camel, how I have created the camel? Don't you look at the skies and the heavens, how I have raised these skies? You have to look. You have to understand, ponder. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ أَفَلَا يُبْصِرُونَ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inviting us. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ. Don't they look? Don't they think? Don't they see? Look. إِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. How I have raised these heavens. وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. And how I have, set firm the mountains in this earth. This is again a great wonder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amir al-Mu'minin also mentions such creations in his Balagh also, so that it is for us to understand the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. And look at this earth. Look at this earth. How I have spread this earth for you to walk on it. You have so many things to look on and to understand and to look into His ayat. And this is what we mentioned last week also. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. I am very soon going to show them my signs in the cosmos and within themselves. So this is how a person understands the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the greatness of His creation. Now, similar to that verse which we recited last week in chapter Ad-Dhariyat. Now, I keep on saying this many times, especially for my young audience here, that we might recite all these ayats, these verses many times. Chapter Ad-Dhariyat, we must, Al-Ghashiyah, we must have recited this so many times. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. But we need to think on it. Yes, there is a time to recite, and there is a time to think and reflect on it, so that we understand how these ayats are relating to us. Now, if a person looks at all these creation and things, that if someone can create such great creations, how great he would himself be. This is something that we need to reach. This is the conclusion that our nafs, ourselves, we have to reach this conclusion. Again, in chapter Zariyat, verse number 20 and 21. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. And in this earth, in this world, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ. And on this earth, there are signs for the people who are true believers. who have true faith. لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, again the same thing. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, and within themselves. أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, don't they think, don't they ponder, don't they give a thought on these things? That there are signs of my creation on this world, on this land, on the face of this earth. And there are signs of our greatness, of my creation within yourselves. Now this hadith, which we might have heard multiple times, where it says, Man arafa rabbah, man arafa nafsah, faqad arafa rabbah. One who understands himself will end up understanding his creator. Why? Why there is so much of emphasis on understanding one's self? Man arafa nafsah. Understand yourself. Understand yourself. Look at yourself. Look at the wonders which lie within ourselves. Now, if a person goes on thinking, the biological, wonders in the creation of a human body is again something very unique. And if a person looks at it, he will find such a sophisticated creation within himself. Now, if a person looks closely and he understands that, I have been created with such wonders, then my creator would be so great. Yes, this is the conclusion that a person needs to go to. So the ayats, they tell us, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. There are signs on this earth, and وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, within yourselves also. Now, this poem, which is attributed to Imam Ali والسلام, which I'm going to recite now, it really, it is a magnificent poem. And if a person looks into its meaning, you will find it amazing. Imam Ali والسلام says, and this is again a tafsir of whatever the Quran is telling us. Imam says, أَتَزْعَمُ أَنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ بَلْ وَفِيكَ انْطَوِ الْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. Do you think that you are a small creation? أَتَزْعَمُ, do you think? أَنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ, do you think that you are a small creation? You are a small, an insect? No. بَلْ وَفِيكَ انْطَوِ الْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. Whereas within yourself, there is a great universe hidden within yourself. You think you are a small creation? No. There is a great universe hidden within yourself. And then Imam says, وَأَنْتَ الْكِتَابُ الْمُبِينَ الَّذِي بِأَحْرُفِهِ يُظْهَرُ الْمُضْمَرُ. And you are an open book through the letters of which the concealed becomes apparent and manifest. You are a book. If you turn the pages, if you start looking within yourself, if you start understanding yourself, you will understand your Lord. Don't think that you are a small creation. Don't think you are a small insect. No. لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. I have granted a special position to Bani Adam, to the human beings. And they hold a special position. They are superior to the rest of my creation. Don't think you are small. Yes, a mountain might be taller than you, but you are greater than a mountain. You are wider than a sea. You are more spread than a sky. You have to understand, and you have to reach out the limits, and you have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you for what? For worshipping Him. And I told you last week also, in order to gain that liberty and that independence, we have to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the purest of meanings of Allahu Akbar. And this is the meaning, this is how you manifest the phrase Allahu Akbar within yourselves. And this is again what Imam Ali والسلام, says, عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Within themselves, فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, within your souls, within themselves. That is when you will understand مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. Once you start understanding yourself gradually, little by little, step by step, that is when you are going to understand your Creator. And now we are talking about so many things. Look at the mountains. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ. Look at the animals. Look at the camel. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. All these things are there. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Look at yourselves also. But we have to reach a conclusion that bigger than this, there are creations. Bigger than the mountains, deeper than the seas. Higher than the skies, there are creations more greater to me and you, and those creations are the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. And we mentioned this point last week also, that we have to reach this conclusion and this point of understanding that bigger than everything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. And you understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by understanding the greatness of His Prophet, the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the greatness of Lady Zahra salamun alayha, and the infallible Ma'asumeen. Therefore, the more we understand, the more we go deep into this understanding. There is a story of Prophet Musa. One day he was, and I'm narrating this story especially for my young audience and the youth here to understand and to connect to these stories and see how gradually, and you know what, there are times in our lives that there is a spark in our lives. There's a spark in our souls, and that little spark can ignite a huge fire, a fire of awareness, yes, a fire of ma'rifah. And this is what the story tells us. Now, Prophet Musa, one day, he was thinking in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Lord, show me the worst of your creation, the worst of your servants in my ummah." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then a voice is heard, and Allah reveals that, you know, Musa, you go early morning and sit at the door of the city, and see whoever comes out of the city first in the morning is my worst of the servants. So Prophet Musa went out early morning, sat at the door of the city, and he was waiting to see that who is the first one to enter, to exit the city and to go out, you know, for their work. So Prophet Musa sees a father and a son. They are coming out of the city. So Prophet Musa says, "Oh Allah, are these your worst servants?" So Allah replies, "Yes, he's the worst of my servant in this nation and this ummah, because he is, you know, reckless. He's always committing sins. He's ungrateful to my favors. Therefore, you know, he's worst of my servants." So Prophet Musa, you know, thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill his prayer, and he goes and he gets busy with his work. And then between the day, he again prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, now that you have shown me the worst of your servants, please also show me the best of your servants." So again, a voice was heard, "Musa, go out again, sit at the door of the city, and see at the night the last person to enter the city." So Prophet Musa went and sat at the door of the city, and he was waiting to see who's the last one to enter the city. And out of his surprise and astonishment, he sees those father and the son, the same people, they are entering the last in the city. So Prophet Musa, he was surprised. He says, "Oh Allah, what is this? You know, how can it be the same person is the best of your servants, and the same person is also the worst of your, you know, servants?" So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals, and he says that Musa, you know, in the morning when this person left the city with his son, when his son came out of the city, he saw the mountains, the high mountains. So he asked his father, "Oh father, these mountains are so huge, they are so big, they are so great. Is there anything greater than these mountains?" So the father replies, "Yes, my son, the earth is greater than the mountains. It's bigger, it's huge, more than you know, the mountains." So the son says, "Is there anything greater than the earth itself? Is there anything huge and bigger than the earth itself?" The father says, "Yes, the skies, you know, the humongous, it's vast, and it's greater than the earth itself." The son says, "Oh father, is there something greater than the heavens and the skies?" Now something, you know, struck this father, and he thought of something, the spark that I was talking about. The father starts weeping, and he starts, you know, crying, and he says, "Yes, my son, there is something greater than the skies also, bigger than the skies." Says what? Says, "My sins and my errors that I have committed are greater than the skies themselves." So the son says, "You know, is there anything?" And he cries, and he sits on his knees on this earth, and he starts to weep and cry, asks for forgiveness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something, you know, struck his mind and his heart, soul. The son says, "Oh Allah, oh father, Is there something more greater than your sins? Then this father cries out and says, yes, there is something greater than my sins, and that is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is when he starts crying and asking for forgiveness. This is how we understand. This is how you understand, step by step, level by level. You see the mountains. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ. Don't you see my creations? وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. And then you are going to reach a level that you will find your errors within yourselves, and then you will think that you are greater than these mountains, the skies and the earth and the ocean. And what are you doing? What life are you leading? What are you doing in this life? What is your purpose? And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in those verses which we just recited. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. And these are the steps that a person needs to take towards the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to manifest this meaning, the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the meaning of the phrase Allahu Akbar. Therefore, we need to understand that these sermons and these sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam, especially the sermon that we are discussing, tells us how to, achieve such high levels, and what are the qualities of the God-fearing people and the pious people, which is mentioned in this Sermon of Muttaqeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to imitate in the seerah, in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, and to achieve the highest moral levels and the qualities of the God-fearing. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع المذنبين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما حجة ابن الحسن المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله ونظم أمركم. In the second part of the sermon, I would like to emphasize on the importance of this month which we have entered, which is the month of Rajab, and it is a month of glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is an important month, and it is an important beginning for a mu'min to get into action, to get into practice, to get into shape in order to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many narrations regarding the greatness of this month, where it is narrated from the Holy Prophet that إِذَا دَخَلَ رَجَبٌ قَالَ اللهم بارك لنا في رجب وشعبان وبلغنا رمضان. The Holy Prophet, whenever the month of Rajab, he used to enter the month of Rajab and used to see the crescent of Rajab, he used to pray, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajabin wa Sha'ban. Oh Allah, bless us in the month of Rajab and Sha'ban, and allow us to reach Ramadan, allow us to reach the whole purpose of Ramadan, which is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore we understand that these days are the days of preparation. These are the days of preparing ourselves for Sha'ban and then Ramadan itself. And again, on behalf of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is narrated that أنه كان يصوم ويقول رجب شهري وشعبان شهر رسول الله وشهر رمضان شهر الله. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to say, he used to fast the whole of month of Rajab, and he used to say that this month of Rajab is my month. Rajabun Shahri, this month of Rajab is my month. Wa Sha'ban Shahru Rasulullah, and the month of Sha'ban is the month of the Holy Prophet, and the month of Ramadan Shahrullah Ta'ala. The month of Ramadan is the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore we understand that in order to reach Ramadan, we have to go through Rajab and Sha'ban. Likewise, Imam is saying Rajab is for me, Sha'ban is for the Holy Prophet, and Ramadan is for Allah. Therefore, if you want to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to go through me. Yeah, you have to prepare yourself through me. So therefore, you have to first understand who Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam is, and then you will gain the marif of the Holy Prophet, and then you will understand who your Lord is. Now, Rajabun Nahrun fil Jannah. Rajab is the name of a river in the paradise, which is Ashaddu bayadan min al-laban, which is whiter than milk itself, sweeter than the honey. Ahla min al-asal, faman sama yawman. And this is how these riwayats, they are encouraging us to worship and to fast and to pray in this month. فَمَنْ صَامَ يَوْمًا مِنْ رَجَبٍ سَقَاهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ النَّهَرِ. One who fasts even for a single day from this month, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give him to drink from this river, which is in the paradise. Now, one very important thing, very quickly, I have only a few minutes left. This is something which is being continuously asked regarding one of the a'mal which we perform during the month of Rajab. Amongst all the supplications that we recite, there is a supplication which is recommended on every day and every night after every prayer. Imam says after every prayer, which is the dua of Ya man arjuhu likulli khair wa amanu sakhatahu inda kulli shar. This dua, which is to be recited after every namaz during the month of Rajab, there are some questions regarding this dua itself. Now, the first thing is that, how you are going to recite this dua. First thing is that you are asked in the narration, the text I was looking today, I was comparing the texts which are there. You are asked to hold your chin by your left hand, and then raise your right hand, the index finger. And you are asked to move your index finger, not your hand itself. So you are holding your chin, and then you are moving your finger. It's not your hand that is supposed to move, and it is your finger that is supposed to move. This is the first point. Second point, it's usually asked that, there are people who don't have beard, unfortunately. They might not be having beard due to some genetic problems, or they might be shaving, God forbid. If a person is shaving, he's doing haram. So shouldn't shave. So if a person does not have a beard, what should he hold? It is not actually the beard that a person is supposed to hold. It is his chin that he's supposed to hold. So if a person, even if he's not having beard, he's supposed to hold his chin. Now, for instance, for the kids and for the ladies, are they not supposed to recite this dua? They should also recite this dua, because it is not the beard that you are supposed to hold. It is the chin that you are holding. The whole concept is the chin. Why? Because the ulama, they say that in order to ask for forgiveness and to show that a person is in a state of distress, you usually, this is a symbolic language, this is a body language, you usually hold your chin in order to show your regret and to ask forgiveness. Therefore, it is a person who is reciting this dua is supposed to hold his chin and to move his index finger of the right hand. These are 2 points. Third point is that many people, they tend to add things in the dua itself. Therefore, you cannot add anything by yourself. Do not change the phrases. You cannot add a dhamir, change a dhamir which is mufrad or to jam', which is singular to plural. No, you cannot do all that. If a phrase is mentioned once, you can only recite it once. Just stick, please. I would request you to stick to the text strictly. Whatever Imam Ali has advised, don't add things from your side. If that was supposed to be, Imam would have asked you to recite it 2 times or 3 times or 4 times or 10 times. There are du'as where it is mentioned that Imam ﷺ kept on repeating that phrase until he lost his breath. He was out of his breath. So you are not asked here in this dua to recite twice or thrice, Ya Dhal Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Dhal Na'ma wal. No, you have to hold your chin and recite it once. This is again the fourth point. Last important point is that, there is a difference of opinion between the scholars regarding your chin and when to move your finger when you are reciting this dua. Now, there are 2 versions. Now, I'm just mentioning this because it's going on record. if a person wants to, confirm, you can go look up into the references. There is a book of Allama Majlisi, which is Zadul Ma'ad. And there also Allama Majlisi is quoting from Sayyid ibn Ta'us. Now, Sheikh Abbas Qummi usually narrates his narrations from Sayyid ibn Ta'us in his book, Mafatih al-Jinan, which is Iqbalul Amal, the book Iqbalul Amal. Now, there are two versions. People who usually you have seen that once you are reciting this dua, and when you reach this phrase that Ya Dhal Jalali wal Ikram, you hold your chin and then you start moving your finger. The original text of their narration tells us and gives us an understanding that the person comes to the Imam and he asks, Mawla, this is a month of Rajab. Why don't you teach me allimni dua yanfi'uni Allah bihi? You teach me something so that I recite it during this month, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give me His blessings, bless me with His blessings. So Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says, Uktub Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam starts to dictate the dua first. So Imam first dictates the dua, and this person writes the dua, and then he says, Thumma qala. This narrator, then he says, Thumma qala, Madda Abu Abdullah. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam raised his left hand, فَقَبَضَ عَلَى لَحْيَتِهِ, and then he puts his hand on his beard, which is his chin, وَدَّعَى بِهَذَا الدُّعَى, and then he began reciting the whole dua. So it is not actually the last phrase that you hold your chin and you move your finger and then you recite. It is the whole dua. While you start the dua, you hold your chin and you move your finger. So this is a difference of opinion regarding this dua, and this, I think, is a better way to recite this dua, which again many of the scholars, especially I heard Allama Javadi also, he explained this issue in his lessons, his lectures. Now you might have seen people reciting this dua the other way around. First they recite the dua and then they hold their chin and they move their finger. That is also okay. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is better according to what Sheikh Abbas Qummi is narrating from Sayyid ibn Ta'us from Iqbal al-Amal, that from the very beginning when you start reciting this dua, Ya man arjuhu li kulli khair wa amanu sakhatahu inda kulli shar, you start reciting the dua while holding your chin with your left hand and moving your index finger of your right hand. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to pray and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this holy month and to achieve the high levels of muttaqeen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu wa tahiyyatu wal ikram ala nabiyyina Abil Qasim Mustafa Muhammad. وصلي على أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل. وصلي على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد. وصلي على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وعلي بن الحسين. اللهم صل على محمد ومحمد بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد وجعفر بن محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وموسى بن جعفر. اللهم صل على محمد وعلي بن موسى. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ومحمد بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد وعلي بن محمد. اللهم صل على محمد والحسن بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد والحجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات، تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات، إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.